Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, veterans, to another episode of the Exposed Vet, jbassers Exposed Vet Productions. My name's John Stacy. They call me jbassers. Have my co-host today. We got dueling co-hosts. We got Mr. Ray Cobb out of Tennessee. How you doing, Ray?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I have about as good as we can be, isn't it? I mean, it's been a rough week for us, and I've got
It
another
has
heavy
been.
hitter here. Yeah, we've got another heavy hitter here. We've got Mr. Alex Graham out of the great state of Washington. He is another co-host tonight. We're not going to make him a guest because he's going to be able to, he's going to have to get in there and just co-host the show with us. Guys, I want to have to say it's a somber show. We don't do a lot of these. Um, Last Friday, the veterans community lost a very, very powerful force to be reckoned with. This man is kind of larger than life in a way, just because of the way he carried himself and what he did. He was the first veteran to win his Agent Orange claim based on direct service connection from exposure inside the continental United States at Fort Gordon, Georgia, where he was the game warden in charge of the ponds and poaching and things like that. And he actually sprayed this chemical on the pond areas because, well, Fort Gordon probably got alligators and they didn't want to sneak it up getting the kids trying to go fishing. That's where James was exposed. Um, he had a very long legacy. Uh, he helped countless numbers of vets, hundreds upon hundreds of veterans with their Agent Orange issues and VA claims. I met James some 25 years ago, back when our radio show was just a fledgling. I used to have hair, believe it or not, and I looked a whole lot younger back then. But we met James, and after a while, James met Ray Cobb at a hospital, and he turned into his mission to help Ray out. And Ray, how you doing, man? You holding up okay, bud?
Yeah, it's been a lot. I've had a lot of great memories this week of things that he's helped me do, and people I've been able to help because of him. It's the interesting part. Both of you guys was at that conference here in Winchester, Tennessee. We did a couple of years ago now, and you remember when James first stood up at the platform? He said. There's a lot of guys that have said they'd like to meet the SOB that developed that Agent Orange. And he stopped and paused and said, "You're looking at him." And that's really what happened. When he was at Fort Gordon, uh, the stories he shared with me is that he was a game warden. He had a little shack out in the middle of the woods close to the lakes and the
Mm-hmm.
ponds, like you mentioned. And they do have a lot of water moccasins, rattlesnakes, and alligators in there. Um, the Department of Defense, through channels back down to him, said, "We need to figure out what mixture needs to be done in order to kill the vegetation in 3 days." And says, I think they put a bottle of dioxin in there, or a 55-gallon barrel, he said, and another barrel of diesel fuel. And it was recommended to do a 25 75, 25%
Mm-hmm.
dioxin, 75% diesel fuel. That
Mm-hmm.
would actually kill the vegetation in 10 days. And they wanted it down to three because of snipers and what was going on in Vietnam. So James had to start with that mixture and started working backwards, adding 5%. Wait 4 or 5 days or a week, see when they died, make notes, continue that till he got it down to a 50-50 ratio. And the 50-50 ratio then killed the vegetation in 3 days, most of it, some four, but most
Mm-hmm.
in 3 days. And he reported that back. And to give you another little step further, he told me that the Department of Defense went to Macedo, who made the dioxin, told them what
Mm-hmm. Monsanto.
James's findings were, and they said, we're not going to do that because uh, mainly it would stay in the ground for 100 years, but number two, it would probably cause health problems to everybody that came in contact with it. Well, I'm not for sure, and James didn't know where, but they wouldn't do it. But the VA found some way or someone that would mix it up on that
Okay.
50-50 ratio, and they painted orange stripes around the barrels, and
Right.
that's where the term Agent Orange came in. Um,
Mhm.
there's Agent Blue and Agent White, but in all of those, they're not the same mixture.
Different,
But it
different
was
mixtures.
pretty interesting that they chose a little game warden down in the middle of the forest in swamp type land, and he felt bad about it because he said he not only had to do around the lakes, they had him spraying up around the campground and the picnic areas. And he said,
Hmm.
I think back about it. He said, I remember one time he sprayed around the picnic table that had some vegetation growing under it. And he said,
Hmm.
about 10 minutes later, he looked up and there's three little kids playing on top of that picnic table. He said, I never will know what happened to them, but it was
Right.
freshly sprayed when they started playing. Um, that was another story he
Sad.
told me. And like you, the way we met was pretty interesting. Um, I had been referred from my diabetic specialist, Dr. Powers at Vanderbilt, to go and see a Dr. Dewey Dunn, who was the head of exposures over at the VA in Nashville, keeping records and doing research on
Yeah.
Agent Orange and other exposures. Met with him. He
Hmm.
looked at my medical records and he concluded as well that it was my diabetes and things were all the only common denominator was Agent Orange. And that was his conclusion as well. So
Hmm.
he said, I know somebody you need to talk with. I'll try to reach out and find him. And we'll see if we can't get you two together. Well, James told me just a few minutes later, uh, Dr. Dunn was coming down the elevator. The elevator door opened, and James was standing there. And he reached out and grabbed him by the collar and jerked him in and hit the close button sign. Said, come to my office. They went back upstairs and went in there. And he told him about my case and showed him some of my medical records that we had been discussing and some of my notes. And later that night, James called me, and that was
Hmm.
about I think that was probably somewhere around 2007, and we've been
Yep.
in contact with each other ever since.
Mm. Okay. How did you run into James Cripps? I mean, you guys probably crossed paths more than once because you guys were basically in the same business, and I mean, you're Agent Orange exposed vet. I mean, of course, it's it's nuts.
If I
Well,
remember correct,
we most of our conversation was done by phone for a long time,
Right.
and then
Right.
finally, I don't remember what was happening, but
Hmm.
we both were had appointment in Nashville at the VA, and we went down
Okay.
and we met each other then at that time. And then later on, we had several meetings, and he has a group that he started called USVA, United States Veterans Alliance, and they
Hmm.
do just exactly what he did. They help veterans win their claims or find those individuals like our Alex Graham that need if they need special help, and
Hmm.
so that's what this group that he started is done. And I went down and joined, and he had me come down a couple of times and speak, and then they take trips from time to time, and we went up to Kentucky to that Miss Patty's. I don't remember what it's called, but it's a playhouse and a
Miss
dinner
Patty's
place, and
restaurant in Grand Rivers, Kentucky, up
yeah,
on
that's
Kentucky
it.
Lake.
And we went up there with that group and enjoyed it, and the neat thing was after the show that night, 10:30, 11 o'clock. There was a bunch of nothing but veterans, all of us members of the USVA, sitting around in this conference room at the motel where we all stayed. and we were all talking about VA claims and VA stuff. And finally, I think it was our wives that told us we had to go to bed. And I think it was about 2 o'clock in the morning when we all kind of headed back to our rooms to settle down for the night. But those type of things and the things he did up at Pigeon Forge, he had the same type of an outing up there that he had put together. The information that was shared during those outings led me to have the conference that you two attended down here in Manchester. I mean in Winchester.
Hmm.
So it was kind of like a springboard effect. I thought, wow, that's good. What would it be like to have one all day and have all these great speakers in
Hmm.
to talk to everybody and share direct information? And so far, I've had three of them, and all of them have been very successful, great attendance. And, you always say, well, if one gets help, then others, it's worthwhile.
It's worth
Well,
it.
I know of three people that are now 100% from that last conference, which you
Hmm.
guys attended. So,
I,
that
I think
all of that connects back to Jack.
our buddy Alex had a big hand in it too, though. Alex, give some of your experience with how you came across James and being the same business this guy was in, really, as far as
Well,
outreach.
it had to have something to do with me talking about Agent Orange because, in addition to what Ray was saying, he's just mentioned orange, white, and blue, but there was
Hmm.
also pink, green, and purple that were used in. They were. I would say that. All right, hold on a second. My job never ends. he they brought that stuff in 68 was probably the last time any of it was on the ground anywhere, but green they started monkeying around with green in 63 and purple and pink made it to Laos, I know for a fact, but it was so toxic. You talk about 3 days at a 1-to-1 mixture, what you refer to as 50-50 mixture. The mechanics, the chemists call that a 1-to-1. Um,
Hmm.
but there was another version which we called super orange, and if you had an emergent situation, shall we call it, where you needed a rapid deforestation project, uh, you could go with what we called super orange, and that is a
Hmm.
2-to-1 mixture of Agent Orange to diesel, any kind of
Hmm.
fuel, diesel, brake fluid, anything you had, avgas, JP4, anything that had been contaminated with some water where they didn't want to put it in an aircraft. Go down to the motor pool every time they did an oil change, they'd save the oil and they'd use that to mix it up with the orange. Or they didn't use it so much with white because that was cacadelic acid, if I remember correctly. It's still sold. It's called Tordon 101. It's
Right.
it's pretty nasty, but mostly it's picloram. The blue, I think, was the one that I'm thinking of, is cacadelic acid. And again, you get it to adhere to things by putting the diesel in there. It causes
A
it to bind
catalyst.
to the foliage.
Hmm.
But man, when I saw a couple of applications of on the Ho Chi Minh Trail as it passed through eastern Laos, there right up against North Vietnam, South Vietnam, and we flew over that area pretty regularly when the weather permitted, if it was not monsoon and raining cats and dogs. But I do remember seeing a super orange. They even said it. They even have what they call a NOTAM, notice to airmen, stay out of this zone. We've got some C-123s coming out of Benoit. They're going to be spraying this whole part of the trail. And we flew over it about 3-4 days later, and you could still smell the diesel smell at 150, 300 feet where we were flying. It was pretty rank. But more appropriately, it was a swath of brown, where you could see all the way down to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It ate the top canopy, the middle canopy, and the bottom canopy. I don't know if they sprayed one, waited for it to die, came back and hit it again, but they totally denuded that part of the trail. And
Mm-hmm.
the NVA just skirted about a kilometer to the west of that and came down, so they keep the foliage over the top of them and disguise their travels, or they go through that section at night when we ostensibly couldn't see them. But we
Or dig
developed a way to
tunnels.
turn night into day with 105 millimeter flares and things like that. That's where the spooky gunships came in, C-130 gunships
Mm-hmm.
and C-47s. But we also had C-119, the old $1.19 boxcars.
Mm-hmm.
Outfitted those things, painted them black. They were flying out of NKP, which is right on the border with Laos and Thailand. And it was right on the river, right on the Mekong. I mean, you could throw a rock and hit the river from the airport.
You
Yeah.
guys ever if you're ever in a battlefield and you're looking up to see a C-130 flying, and he turns, you see it pop up on one wing, starts to go around circles, run.
Well, the C-130s were still active Air Force. Most of the places we were flying out of, everything you saw had an O on the tail, stood for
Mm-hmm.
obsolete. That meant that it had been relinquished to Bird and Sons Air, also called Air America, Southern Air Transport. It just keeps metamorphosing after every war. But Continental Air, Bird and Sons Air, and Air America technically were three different companies, but they're all owned by what we used to call the Continental International Airlines, or the CIA, Consolidated International Airlines. But nobody said that out in public. Everybody knew what was going on. But James came to me, I think, when I went on to what was that? Hadit.com. I think that's where he found me originally.
Right.
2008. 2009. Right when I first won my claims for 100% in 2008, I was still litigating to go back to 94. He and I started talking about what I knew about Agent Orange at that point, and I started telling him, I said, well, hell, there's a lot more than Agent Orange, man. This is like Baskin Robbins. It comes in a bunch of different flavors. I can't tell you which one's nastier than the other, but that super orange, that was absolutely stupefied me to see how fast that could burn through stuff. And talk about 3 days, I'm talking 5 hours.
Well, it's the second fastest, the second fastest burning agent next to napalm.
And if you ask me, I have a strong suspicion, and I'll explain this to you in a second, that James got that shit all over him. I don't care, he might have been wearing gloves, but there's just no way you could not get it on you directly. And if it got on him in a non-diluted, it wouldn't really make any difference whether it was diluted 1-to-1 or if it was, he just dug his hand right into the barrel. That stuff's lethal under any dosage or anything. Once you get around that stuff, you've condemned yourself to cancer.
I did say we talked to him one time. We talked about it. He's talking about his issues. And Ray, and I think he knows this conversation too. We're talking about specific pinpoint Agent Orange proof that you've been exposed to Agent Orange.
Mm-hmm.
And he got up and he said, "Well, I have chloracne, which is the acne form. If you've been exposed to this Agent Orange or to the agent itself, the dioxin, then it is a direct exposure, and that's probably one of the only things that can give you chloracne." So that's what he was explaining.
I had chloracne for years afterwards, and people would look at the underside of my arm and they see little blackheads where I rubbed against the aircraft, stuff like that. This is, "Oh, that's a weird place to have a zit." And I said, "It sure is, ain't it? And I got some monsters behind my ears and they keep getting infected and I have to go to the doctor." I didn't know it was chloracne. I honestly didn't. I just thought I wasn't scrubbing myself good enough with a washcloth when I got in the shower. And I didn't get that diagnosed until about 92. I was almost completely over it when they found out I had the porphyria. And those are the two were originally discovered to be associated with Agent Orange. When they started manufacturing this stuff in 1958 down in Tennessee, everybody's coming down with porphyria and chloracne at the factory there. And they says, "Oh, well, we got to buy you some new gloves. They got to come up higher than they're giving them those, the ones the women use to wash the dishes with, the latex gloves or whatever, came up to about the middle of their forearm here." So they bought them some that came all the way up to their armpits. And of course, it chafed at their t-shirts. It was hot and sweaty and everything. And then you get it onto the gloves, and then you get it onto your t-shirt and up in here. And they're complaining about having chloracne clean up into their armpits. And they said, "Okay, now we're going to put masks on you too." All those guys have got to be dead by now. That was 58. They knew how nasty the stuff was way back then. They probably hadn't tested it enough to know that dioxin was the byproduct, that they couldn't even foresee that combining 2,4-D and 2,4,5-D was going to create a third one, which is the TCDD, the tetrahydrocannabinol, whatever the hell that stands for. And that was just an incidental byproduct, but that was the toxicity associated with it, not the actual chemical. In isolation between the two of them. It's just when you put the two of them together, that's when the problem developed. But up in Laos where we were, the kids would come over to the barrels. There wasn't any rhyme or reason. There was various times there was orange there or white or blue. And they'd open up the lids and mix all the stuff up. And the kids would come over with bleach scoops with the bottoms cut off. And that was the first time I ever thought about that. And I thought that would work pretty good in a boat if you're trying to bail a rowboat out or something after a rainstorm or if it's leaking. And they were scooping those things up and running out there on the PSP metal graded ground cover in the taxiways and where we had the revetments, where we had our O1s and the PC6s parked. And some of the bigger ones, the gunships. This up in Laos, the kids, one in each thing, they sprinkle it, and that was pure. I don't think it was mixed. I don't know for a fact, but I used to watch them do it in the morning. They were already up doing it early, and then they'd all run down to the creek that was flowed through the southeast corner of the valley there, and that was everybody's water supply. Not ours. We had a well drilled, but everybody just scooped their water in buckets out of that river. And here's all the kids upstream rinsing off all the Agent Orange after the morning spray. And that water went downstream, and all the ladies are out there washing their clothes and scooping the water for drinking up above all the soap suds that were going down the creek. And you know that they were scooping up a lot of Agent Orange out of there. You can even see, you know how when you spill gasoline on water, you can have appearance on the surface of the water. You can see that. That's why we wouldn't drink out of it. God, no, I wouldn't eat a fish out of there if one could survive. But I talked about that. Go ahead.
Has our government ever paid one dime to these poor people?
Hell no, man. They all had to run for their lives. They were probably in prisoner of war camps down in Thailand. That's the Hmong tribesmen. There's a big cohort of them in Fresno and another one up in Minnesota.
The Hmongs, yeah.
Yeah, we called them Mayo back then. I don't remember. I guess I do remember the term Hmong, but it was... they usually just called them Mayo tribesmen. And there were Mayo tribesmen in northern Thailand. I know that we had a couple of airstrips right on the border with Laos, and they were on both sides of it, the northwest corner over there. And they all dressed the same. They're all black pajamas. And all the women had just tons of silver hanging off them. That was their marital wealth, so to speak. They carried it with them.
Yeah.
They didn't have any lock boxes to guard it with, so they just carried it. But
Okay.
I talked to James, about that extensively. And then when he finally reached a point where he'd hit the wall, he wanted to know who I trusted or suggested. And that's when I turned him on to Chisholm, and Kirkpatrick and said, well, if you're going to have anybody do it, I trust these guys to do it. And it was very successful, or I should say they were very successful.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever want to read about that, you just go to that CAVC site and type in James' name, his last name in there, James, or Cripps, comma, James, and it'll pop up his whole case and show it to you. And I think he cut a pretty good swath. He made it easier for a lot of people that were going to follow him. That's my belief anyway. It's all been busted open now for Thailand. I can't understand Laos. They opened up a little window of Laos from September of 71 to June of 72 or something, but we were dumping some nasty crap on Laos starting about 1965. So that window should be a lot larger on paper, but of course that's one of those anomalies. Together we never served in Laos. We weren't there. So I don't know how we could have gotten Agent Orange on ourselves. I'm lucky. God, I've got the early Parkinson's symptoms, Parkinsonism, I guess, hypothyroidism, porphyria, but I didn't come down with diabetes. I haven't come down with I take that back. I just got diagnosed last month with ischemic heart disease, but they said it isn't going to kill me. And I got one of these Dumaflachis here in my chest, my fire extinguisher, in case something does happen. So I'm
so you got the nuclear heart?
I could still write a legal blog. More appropriately, I hit that elk at 206 yards last week. One shot right through the heart. That made me feel good. I haven't lost my vision yet either.
What? You lost it to 43 years.
Man, you should
That's
see
cool.
that rack. I can't even begin to tell you, that thing is monstrous. 306 Boone and Crockett. My son shot at 316. This place looked like it was the land time forgot. There was more elk than, I don't think I've seen that many elk in one place. Probably about 120 of them before 2 days was up.
I'll take you up an old stomping ground. I'll show you some elk.
Too bad that this isn't Tennessee, man, where they have a 12 bull limit or something. But yeah,
Eastern Kentucky, buddy, it's a bunch of.
James cut to me. He really he was a forerunner of proven for a lot of other people that they could do it. And there's another base up in New York that's in the same predicament in terms of contamination with Agent Orange, and pretty easy to figure out if you go in there and get a soil sample.
Is it Fort Drum?
Yeah. And there's a couple of others. It turns out now that it's showing that they were spraying Agent Orange on poison oak down at Camp Pendleton in as late as 68, 69. We know that
in California, folks.
Fort Mac, I know that I've got one client there on that, but they swear up and down, of course. Well, the actual Agent Orange wasn't used. It was just a precursor to it. And one of them is crossbow. That's a 2,4-D. I use that out here in my pasture. I mix that stuff down to about 20%. and use it on tansy ragwort because it poisons my horses. And my next door neighbor won't get rid of it. And he won't let me come on his land and spray his. So I keep treating my pastures with it. But that's a 24-hour product. You spray that and you come back 24 hours later. That thing isn't green anymore. It's brown. It looks like World War III. It looks like somebody took a torch and heated it up. I'm surprised if it can do that all by itself. God, imagine. Maybe I'm not mixing it at 20. Maybe I'm mixing it at 50-50, but it's pretty lethal shit.
Get you a flamethrower, Alex.
I've got a flamethrower, not a military version, but the kind you use to put torch down on a roof. Mm-hmm. And it worked real good on blackberries. But I found out that 2,4-D worked. I just spray it on the leaves and come back there within 2 weeks. The whole plant's dead.
Yeah.
Well, if you got agent, go down to Farm Tractor Supply, one of the places like that, and ask for a crossbow. They got it. I can't think.
Yeah, they sell it over here in southern states, and Tractor Supply companies got it.
Not a gallon for $56, but I'll tell you what, that's
Rural King.
You want
they got a Rural King in Tennessee.
You want to spray some of that in honor of James Cripps and be impressed with what it can do.
I don't know, man. I mean, it's there's a lot of empty vets right now. There's a lot of folks that he's been helping, things like that, are probably at a loss. It's going to take somebody very, very, very skilled in what they know how to do, what they do to just pick up the torch, just to pick it up off the ground, not to carry it. Because you lose a guy like him with all the knowledge and everything he's had, it's a big, major loss. And just hopefully Sandra and his daughter can actually pick up the torch too, because this man is pretty, cussed off in race. She's real well versed in the whole process. And help people out. Don't give up. Don't stop what he's doing. Help him carry on his legacy. I mean, it's James Cripps. Come on, guys.
Well, I don't think we found all the vets that were exposed to Agent Orange that served in the United States. I'm sure.
Oh, you got a drop.
I'm sure we haven't.
I'm sure people haven't even heard about it.
Mm-hmm. You guys realize, folks, listeners, James Cripps is the first one. Mm-hmm. The man on your left over here looking at the screen and those suspenders on, which is pretty cool. I like suspenders. Mr. Ray Cobb is number 2. And there's been a few more, but how many there been now, Ray? Do you know?
Oh, I have no idea. I know there's been a few more. I know a couple of others from down in Louisiana. Then I think there's been a few more from Fort McCallum, Alabama. Matter of fact, there's a Fort McCallum webpage now that talks about toxic exposure there. And I'm a member of it, look at it from time to time. And they post things when people have won their cases that were there in the 70s and 80s. Because, that was a chemical training center. And that's where they used it, and they trained with it there. And there was a gentleman by the name of Donnie Charbonneau, and he was a sergeant. He actually taught the classes. He was drafted, and he made sergeant with special situation within 6 months. And the reason, he was a chemist for Gulf Oil Company. And when they found out he was a chemist, then, and all of his knowledge about different chemicals, then they actually sent him to Fort McCallum. That's where I met him. He was actually a next door neighbor of mine in our apartment complex. And he taught the classes. And one of the things he did was he would go out and bring in every Monday morning a new little 3 different types of tropical plants from the nursery, and he would spray them all with the different chemicals, and then they would keep notes and talk about them all week, and would watch them. By the time the class was over Friday afternoon, there wasn't any leaves left on any of them. but they made a point of the different chemicals and what they did. So unfortunately, the next thing I knew, probably 10 years after I got out of the service, which would have been somewhere around the mid 70s, um, he maybe early 80s, he actually he had a child born with a birth defect. His wife, who washed his clothes, um, and himself came down with some nerve problems, and could not, lost use of hands, feet, uh, twitch all the time, and they both passed away in their late 30s. And even though the last time I talked with him, he said he was sure it was from the chemicals that he would mix up and would teach in the class. And of course, he brought it home to his wife, and they both, he was stationed there using that stuff when she became pregnant. And so he contributes all of that to his military connection. But to the best of my knowledge, he didn't get any claims or anything before his death. When he got out after 2 years and went back to Gulf Oil Company, he was still fine. It wasn't until after he'd been out about 5 or 6 years that he started having problems.
That's what happened.
Johnny Charbonneau, nice guy.
It takes a while. It takes some things a while to manifest. I mean, of course, the VA's got presumptive conditions and presumptive limitations. I think there's a presumption. Actually, there's a presumptive on. I think correctly, isn't it, Alex?
The one thing that upsets me dramatically is that VA and the government, I guess I should say, not the VA specifically, has created a situation of these are the only diseases we'll recognize, but they're not basing it on a broad enough basis of experience overall veterans. They're just the ones that come down with it. There's a bunch of them come down with problems. Vietnam veterans, or I suppose by extension, people like James Cripps, exposed in a continental United States, but never ever hear anything about Agent Orange. Don't ever apply for any benefits. Are totally unaware, but they come down with diseases other than what's on the list of 14. Now, look at me. I came down with the Crohn's disease. My son came down with ulcerative colitis, which is basically the same thing in the large intestine rather than the small one. He's being treated with Remicade. I never got that opportunity because they couldn't understand what I had. It didn't act like Crohn's disease. It didn't hit me all at once. I've had 5 operations, and they've whacked out about 39 inches, about 95 centimeters, whatever that is. And there's other diseases. I've had to go out and get medical opinions that brain glioblastoma or glioblastoma, I'm not sure, was caused by sinus infections from breathing it. And one of my vets, his name was Livingstone, he was out there in an I-Corps, and they're flying over him and spraying it, getting it on him. You could feel it. I've felt it before. It's like a real light, oily mist that comes down. If it gets below the tree line, it still gets down on you. But he said he was exposed numerous times out in the field. He kept coming down with sinus infections. And finally, back in 2014, he came down with a brain cancer directly. And of course, they fought him tooth and nail, wouldn't give it to him. I had to go out and get an independent medical opinion to win it. But it was considered like, there's only 3 ways you can get this crap into you: on your skin, through your nose, or eat it and get it into your stomach somehow.
Ingest it, inhale it.
Say it again.
Ingestion, inhalation, and when it soaks through your skin.
Right.
Well, they call it convection.
All 3 methods are probably all viable, and I would say that here's what I know. When I was up there, every time the choppers came into land, they had these big HH-53s, called them big, ugly, friendly fellows. They were search and rescue. and they'd bring them
Mhm.
up to Long Tien every morning and park land. They got 8 rotors, and they'd stir up all that red dust.
Mhm.
And if you were down there even waiting to take off or anything, it was just a cloud of red haze that went everywhere. And you couldn't help but get it in you. And you land that evening and you take a canteen and you kind of get some water up your nose and blow it back out into your handkerchief. It come out pink. So I knew I was getting a lot of that dust. And that was where all the little kids with the bleach bottles were dumping it on the ground with the red clay.
Mhm.
And I came down with Crohn's, but I know that from a respiratory standpoint, that's why you get lung cancer from it. It gets, you breathe it
You
right
do.
in your lungs. Uh, I think liver cancer is viable because if you ate it, like I did, or get it in your respiratory tract or something,
Mhm.
you got a bad chance of coming down with it wherever you ingest it. Now, as far as the skin goes, that's the chloracne. That's the, for at
Mhm.
least I think that's the pathway you get that. But see a lot of guys that never had dermatitis, eczema, things like that. They came back
Well,
from it. We're like,
if
God,
you
look
had
at
a cut,
it's all
if
scaly.
you had a cut on, a cut on your body, it gets in there. It gets inside your body too, just like you swallowed it in your vascular problems.
Well, there's just so many different ways I can think of getting it in there. Now I've gotten a guy with multiple sclerosis. I've got him service connected for it due to Agent Orange. I just did that last fall. He'd been fighting him since 1988 when he came down with it. Finally found me because I got some gal service connected for it back in 14 or 15. He heard about that. To me, James Cripps' journey and what he did for us, I'm not ever going to wave a flag and say I could hold a candle to him. But I've got that method, or not the method, I guess I've got the mantra of win or die. If you're going to be dying of a disease, you might as well try to fight for your win, even if you're going to die at the end. I just never give up. I can't put the white flag up and wave it with any of my veterans. I fight and fight and fight until I can't see any other avenue. But usually they die before I can exhaust every possibility that I can exert in their behavior or on their behalf.
Mhm. Right.
James Cripps was
This
a
is
hell of a influence to me as well as anybody, as much as anybody. I was impressed with his win or die menu. He's a bad to the bone. That guy never
he
gave
had a red
James was always moving forward.
no.
Matter of
Mhm.
fact, he called me on Friday while he was in dialysis before he had the surgery on a Monday, which was a week before he passed away. And he was telling me about a vehicle that a handicap van area company here in Middle Tennessee was bringing in for him. And he had already on Thursday, the day before, had gone to Vanderbilt's driving test center and had passed the first half of that driving test. That now down here, if you get any adaptive equipment paid for, you have to go through that test at Vanderbilt. That 2 week is 2 day, broken down two different things. And the first half, he had passed it. And he was all excited that he had passed it and was looking forward to getting the van. He was telling me about it. It was going to have a lift that came out from underneath it like mine, and the back was going to go down and make a bed, and they would be able to sleep in it and everything. But um, he was always moving forward, even up to the end. He just never slowed down. He never looked back, and he always had a I'm going to get over this. I'm going to beat this, and I'm not ready to go yet. So don't bother me. He has
Well,
that type of an attitude. That I
Mhm.
think. Well, you and I, John, have talked on several occasions. We know several times he was really on the edge, or even a couple of times stepped over the
Oh
edge.
yeah.
I remember
I
he
mean, he
used to
was.
laugh and tell me that he was clearing some property for Mandy, his daughter, to build a house. And he said the next thing he knew, he woke up and he was laying in front of his bulldozer. He said he didn't think two things about it, but he just couldn't remember what was going on. The bulldozer was still running. He said he just got up, climbed back on, and finished working that day. And he goes in, there's all these phone calls, blinking lights, about 10 or 12 of them. And he listens to them, and it's all Vanderbilt. Would you call us? Would you please call us, Mr. Cripps? He called him and he said, "Well, what's going on?" They said, "Well, how are you? How do you feel?" And he told them, "I feel fine." Why? They said, "Mr. Cripps, you died on us. You were gone, and we had to shock you 3 times to get you to come back." And he said, "Well, I feel fine now." They said, "Come in tomorrow morning." So he said, "I got ready, went on in, you know." But that was the way he was. He was not going to stop, you know. And he taught me that you just don't quit, you don't give up, and you don't give up on veterans. If you're working and helping a veteran, and you run into a roadblock, you figure out. He would used to go with me. He says, "You do the same thing I do, but you just kind of sugarcoat it, and you kind of slip around the corner without them watching." And I laughed. I said, "Well, yeah, that's kind of the way I was taught, that you get more flies with honey than you do any other way." And we got the same accomplishments over the years. And he would tell me what to do or what he had done, and how it worked. And I would do the same thing. I just may not get as aggravated at the VA and tell him off like he would. He didn't hold back any punches, man. He let them know what he thought,
Mhm.
and where he was coming from
Yeah.
and where he was
And,
going.
and don't
And
ever
you
tell
got to
that man not
appreciate
to
that.
poke. Yeah. Didn't ever tell that man not to
Yeah,
poke the
yeah.
bear.
Don't tell him you can't knock that wall down, because
I,
he'd say, "How many times do you want me to hit it?" I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how many
But he
times
is all.
I've heard that "don't poke the bear" crap, but if I hadn't poked the bear and if James hadn't, we'd all be in a world of you know
We
what.
all three of us been in trouble.
Yeah,
We all three have been in trouble. I'd still
I
be
heard
stuck
that
at
in
probably
1989.
70%.
I heard that in
oh
1989.
well, I would have zero. I
EAV
would
rep
be at zero if it wasn't for
got you
James Cripps.
0% for that tinnitus. Now let's not rock the boat for 5 or 10 years, and we'll come back and get 10%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah. But James also was a stickler because, he would interview you and he would talk to you about your claim. And what he was doing actually was a car salesman. He was qualifying your backside to see if you were on the up and up. Because James wanted to make sure that the people he helped were um, legitimate. And if he felt that you were dishonest or illegitimate in either way with your VA stuff, like he had little clues and things like that, I don't think he would get involved too much with you because he knows that, you know, reputation is a big thing. But if you made it past that and he helped you, he wanted to help you with everything that you deserve to get. Make sense? It don't matter if it's a zero
Yes, he did.
percenter.
He
He
would
wanted to
take
help
me.
make sure you got it.
He and I talked
I
about
remember
that.
very clearly before I even won my first case. I can remember him talking about, "Well, we're going to get the diabetes, and you're going to have Steny cart disease, and you're going to have this, and then this is going to happen." I mean, he was going on and on and on.
Mhm.
And sure enough, 15 years later, everything he told me that day was true.
Come to fruition.
Every
Mhm.
problem that I developed, everything that came down that the doctors had to do, he was correct about every bit of it. And just so much, and he led me all the way through. And then when I was working for caregiver level 2, which he and I both had to fight for that, um, he turned me into Alex. He said, when I got denied, he said, "Well, you could appeal it, but it wouldn't do good." I said, "Well, what do you think?" He said, "Go to Alex."
Oh,
So I
Alex
called
Graham.
Alex, and Alex got it for me in about 8 or 9 months. Wasn't that long,
Told the same.
but I think a lot of that had to do with the groundwork that James had me do on my first original claim, that Alex could see everything that I had. And he knew, I remember he knew just a few seemed like a few minutes, the way he was going to
Mhm.
approach it on my appeal, and it worked.
Right.
Well, it's a recipe, just like baking cookies. It's just every person is a different flavor of cookies. You got sugar cookies, you got peanut butter cookies, you got pecan, this and that, oatmeal.
Pumpkin spice right now.
It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that they're different kinds of cookies. It's you're starting out with a cookie. That's what the basic unit is. And I, I, James and I talked about this more than once about credibility and veterans who they didn't have enough supportive evidence in their favor that you could trust them enough. And I got burned by a few of them. One of them, my congressman handed him to me, and I got into his file and the old-fashioned way. And then about 6 months after I took him on, I got VBMS, and boom, I'm in there and I'm looking at his file and I see DD 214. I went, wow, that's weird. I already have that. And I took a look at it and it was a different one. And this one was newer than the one he handed me. And it said OTH DD 258 on it. And that confused me, of course, because he showed me one that said honorable. And I discovered that he was a different person from whom he was trying to put himself out as. And I was this far away from taking him up to the court or the board. And if once you do that, you're stuck with him. You have to defend him at the board all the way through the conclusion of that. I don't have any objection to it, but I didn't want to be saddled with a Gomer, a guy that would lie to me. And now we have a jungle drum, so to speak. You've met Wesley McCauley. I think Jennifer Lonas has been on the show, some of the others. We have a consortium of about 20 or 30 of us, all of whom have gone through this SMC school. And we tend to find somebody comes to us and it's just too good to be true. How could this happen? You were only in the service for 18 days and you managed to come down with all these diseases and injuries that have plagued you for life, and TBI and PTSD. So some Wesley will call me and he'll say, hey, danger, danger. If Joe Edwards calls you, be on the lookout. I vetted this guy and he's got more problems. I actually pulled his POA and you don't want it. And we all communicate that back and forth to protect ourselves so we don't invest a bunch of time or energy into one of these jobs and then find out we're holding a can of worms. And it happens. It's really sad that guys claim they've got Purple Hearts and everything, and then you get into their file and discover they never left Fort Huachuca in Arizona or one of these places that never ever had any service in Vietnam or overseas at all. And
Tell them you get a disclaimer, Alex. Have a disclaimer says, be on the up and up with me, because if you're lying to me, I'm going to find out.
yeah, it's too easy. It's sort of like shooting fish in a barrel to find out some guy's lying to you. With VBMS, when you guys get a claims file, and I know this because I've gotten quite a few claims files back on a CD for my clients, it's a little bit more tenuous when you do it that way because stuff from 1968 is right here, right next to it's 2011, and then 1980, and then 2019. It's all heebie-jeebie jumbled together. Unlike that, the VBMS is a beautiful chronological assembly of everything in your file. And you can just scroll through. It's all labeled. If you see DD 214 and some kind of something or other associated with it, and then 150 documents later, you see a claim, another DD 214, you're going, what? Why would there be two in here? and that's when you find this kind of thing. VBMS is not very duplicative, but going back to the real subject of this blog or video, James Cripps taught me quite a bit. I might have taught him a lot of stuff and given him a lot of advice, but he gave me an education and compassion. I think the guy was, he could have been a priest. He had that countenance where everybody's okay. I don't care what you've done. Come to me, I'll fix it for you. But of course, it hinged on honesty. I've been lucky. I've only
Alex, as you were talking there, it reminded me of one case that I had of a gentleman in Michigan who kept calling me and trying to figure out I'd helped him get his first 60% with his knees, because he's diabetic. And then he was trying to get his foot and he was trying to get his back, and he had the 60% for one knee and I think 40% for the other. And he calls me and he's trying to figure out, he said, now, how does this affect my back? And all asking me all these questions. I said, what does your doctor say? Well, my doctor says this and says that. Well, has he put it in writing? No, he hadn't put that in writing yet. He just tells me. And this is a VA doctor. And so I said, well, just ask him to put that in your notes. Well, we keep talking along. Finally, he says, what time is it? I said, well, it's 11:30 here. It's 12:30 your time there in Michigan. He says, oh, I got to go. I got a 2:00 tea time. So I realized he did not have very bad knee problems or back problems if he's going to go out and play golf. I called James. I said, James, what should I do? I said, this guy is trying to rip everybody off and will end up giving, a bad reputation to other veterans. And he said, Bray, forget it. He said, just they'll catch it. He either won't get it or he'll mess up and they'll catch it. And he says, you know what I do in those cases? I said, no. He said, when they call, I just don't answer the phone. And that's what I did. And for 6 months after that, he'd call once a week or every other week, and they didn't answer the phone. And finally, he quit calling.
Well, I've had a guy looking at the C&P exam 3 or 4 days after he had it for aid and attendance, and said he arrived all by himself. He drove himself to the exam, and I went, well, how in Sam Hill could you be needing aid and attendance if you could still drive? And he says, well, I only drive, short distances in the community, no more than 5 or 10 miles. I said, you should get behind the wheel.
You don't need aid and
claiming what you're trying to claim, and you're behind the wheel of a car. I can't represent you. I had another guy who was doing VR&E, doing Chinese dialect in college, like on a VR&E claim. And I said, well, how could you be trying to learn Chinese dialect if you're needing SMCT? He said, well, I don't know. I just want to keep myself occupied. I said, how do you get to the college in the evening? He said, well, my wife drives me. I said, thank God for that. Drop the class. I'll never be able to win the claim for you. I honestly believe that he needs it. He's got all the psychologists and psychiatrists say he needs it.
Yeah.
But he said he doesn't want to park the car. He doesn't want to give up his life, but he can't remember what he's doing. So what's the purpose of it? It's just a entertainment, but it's depriving him of the ability to win.
You're better off gaming or something at home instead of doing that. I mean, you do something like that. I mean, it's that's it's hard enough to get aid attendance and need it. I know people don't need it to get it, but it's hard to get.
Well, I develop my claimants one by one, and I don't try to get them more than I can get them. If a guy doesn't need SMCT, it doesn't need to be put into a hospital situation in the absence of his wife. I'm not going to fight for it. I'm just not.
Mm-hmm.
I have morals on that. And I can tell if a guy's still driving a car, I honestly don't believe he deserves to have aid and attendance. It's not that I'm anti-veteran. Boy, you'll never find a guy that's more for veterans than me. I'm probably James Cripps to boot, or Ray, or you. I mean, we want them to win, but we're not going to cheat, steal, and lie for them to get them there. I'm not going to do it. I'm sure you guys have at least my morals in that subject.
All right. Well, listen, guys, we're about out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and finish the show off. I'm going to go ahead and, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and read his obituary, give the details out. Here's James's name. His full name was James Melvin Cripps. He was born January 19th, 1949. And he died October 10th, 2025, Ashton City, Tennessee. James Melvin Cripps of Ashton City, Tennessee, passed away peacefully on the morning of October 10th, 2025, surrounded by the love of his family. Born on January 19th, 1949 in Nashville, James lived a life of purpose, grit, and faith. And in 1967, he made 2 lifelong commitments. He volunteered to serve in the United States Army, and he married the love of his life, Sandra Lee Bissinger Cripps. Together, they built an amazing life that has strongly is enduring. Says during his Army service, James actually drove for the commanding general of Fort Gordon, Georgia. Then he served as a game warden with the military and a military policeman. And it was during that time that he was exposed to Agent Orange, and it was a toxin that would challenge his health for the rest of his life, but didn't challenge his spirit. After leaving the military, James worked as a mechanic and retired from Exxon in 1985. He founded Custom Wood Products Incorporated, where he designed and built one-of-a-kind handcrafted custom furniture for Nashville's finest homes and families, including those of Stephen Curtis and Mary Beth Chapman, Vince Gill, Billy Ray Cyrus, Jeannie C. Riley, and many others. So he was the furniture maker to the stars. His work was as sturdy and beautiful as his character of the man who built it. He made some good furniture, really good, and he was good at what he did. In 1977, James and Sandra bought a 35-acre plot in Ashton City, Tennessee, where they raised their children and built quite literally their family home. James built his house with his own 2 hands. The first thing he ever built there was a doghouse, and the second was a family home that still stands to this day. He never said the word can't unless it was followed by the word yet. Jim was a devoted husband, father, and papa. He taught his children to hunt, fish, pray, and play. Life on Petway was full of life, twice a day fishing in the summer, twice a day hunting in the winter, laughter around every corner, and faith at the center of it all. In 1997, on his 48th birthday, James suffered a massive heart attack. His brother John's quick actions saved his life, beginning a new chapter of resilience that would define the decades that followed. When doctors told him he might have 10 years left, he proved them wrong because he lived an additional 28 more years. Never one to accept injustice, James spent years researching his own medical conditions and uncovered undeniable proof that Agent Orange had been used inside the continental United States. The military initially designed it, but James Cripps became the man who proved it. His courage and persistence changed history, leading the government to acknowledge the truth and paving the way for countless veterans to receive the benefits they deserve. Through the mission, he discovered his purpose, helping other veterans win their battles with the VA. He founded the USVA, United States Veterans Alliance, with a handful of friends who shared his determination. Today, more than 40 of their members are recognized as 100% disabled veterans, and a testament to James's advocacy, relentless advocacy. Beyond his mission, James was a craftsman, car lover, hunter, storyteller, and the very definition of a family man. He was a friend to all who needed help and a champion for those who couldn't fight for themselves. Even as illness took its toll, he never complained. He simply found new missions, new people to help, and new ways to smile. He's survived by his devoted wife, 58 years, Sandra Lee Cripps, his son Jim Cripps, his wife Emily, grandson Castle Cripps, his daughter Mandy Plemons, husband Nathan, and granddaughters Alex and Avery McCormick, Samantha Plemons, and Chief and grandson Chris Plemons, his daughter Lauren Spence, and grandchildren Allie, Nikki, and Toby, his brother and lifelong best friend John Cripps, and sisters Ann Way and Susie Stafford. So John's still alive. He is in preceding death by his good friends Floyd Barnes, Henry Barnes, Harry Horner, and Jim Lee, a group he loved like brothers. I guess they were all pretty good little group of boys there. So James lived 28,023 days, each one filled with purpose, laughter, and love. Like the carpenter he built not only furniture, but a legacy that will stand the test of time. As his family and friends bow their heads, we know God has blessed the man who built the beds. The family court invites relatives and friends to visit on Wednesday, October 22nd, this coming Wednesday, from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until 7 o'clock in the evening in the West Hall at Harpeth Funeral Home and Crematory, 6962 Charlotte Pike in Nashville. That's Central Time, guys. The funeral service will be held on Thursday, October 23rd at 11:30 in the morning, with visiting prior to the service starting at 10 o'clock in the morning. The committed service will immediately follow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon via an escorted cortege at Middle Tennessee Veteran Cemetery, 7931 McCrory Lane in Nashville. In lieu of customary remembrances, basically flowers and things like that, the family requests donations to be made to the United States Veterans Alliance, USVA. This can be done by contacting Mr. Bobby Phillips at area code 615-476-1796. Again, that's Bobby Phillips at 615-476-1796. Long obituary, guys, but I mean, it's hard to say goodbye to somebody that statue. I mean, you get used to talking to James. It's like, well, what's going to happen there? It's kind of like my previous co-host, he's still with us, but he's had pretty serious injuries, and his communication skills are not the best. So you miss people like that. So, but Alex, thanks for coming on and helping us say goodbye to James. And Ray, I will thank you for co-hosting, and I'll see you next week, buddy.
Sounds good.
Good thing John's younger
We'll
than
get
me, because
together and
y'all can do
Huh?
a nice one for me too after I'm gone. I'm 75 here come shortly.
So we'll do one for you, buddy. I mean, you're part of the crew. You're part of the group, buddy. We can't do it without you. We got your back. So we got you. You're part of the old crew. I mean, our friendship is probably a lot stronger than a lot of other folks. But we've been that way for a while.
I've never been a parade kind of guy. I don't wear one of those Vietnam hats. I don't want people to come running up to me and spray saliva in my face and say, "Thank you for your service."
Oh, I've had a lot of issues with that. I mean, I've actually chewed some folks out for that stuff. I'm like, you look at this group, and this group. Look at you. This is a big meeting, okay? They all three have different agendas. I said, can you imagine the power of positivity you would have if your agenda, and your agenda were basically the same and you're on the same page? You get a whole lot more done, but you just run around in circles. Looks like a circle jerk trying to find a pivot, man.
Well,
Mm,
my mission in life
Well,
very simple. I have one, my North Star is veterans, and it always will be.
that's
I
right.
try to get pestered to do all kinds of little extras, like, "Hey, would you celebrate and do this for us or that for them?" And I went, "No, it's veterans. I'm not going to go out and do a clothing drive or something. I
Yeah.
litigate. That's my job. You guys, somebody else can go out
Yeah.
and wave the flags on Veterans Day for me."
Well, we'll see. I mean, Mr. Wesley. Wesley can't do it, but Mr. Bender, we're heading to the federal circuit, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Listen, I got to get off. Again, guys, thanks for coming on. We'll do this again next week. We might have a pinch hitter because Thursday's James's funeral. We might have to have somebody step in on the show, but I'll be in contact with some folks. But with that, this is John, on behalf of Alex and Ray, Mr. Cobb, and Mr. Graham. We'll be shutting her down for now. See you guys later.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
good night.
All right.